Well, Michelle, thank you for reaching out and
Thank you.
coming on.
I feel like I should have a notebook. I want a notebook.
No, I don't usually. Actually, what's funny is I don't always.
I always have a notebook.
Yeah, I don't always use this, right? So because I wanted to do a little bit of a background check to know who you are and like what you do.
Thank you.
I do a little bit of research, but yeah, we've mentioned a couple of times through Instagram, but also when we were in the sauna, how it was kind of synchronous.
Yes.
How this aligns. So you reached out by observing how my friend Brandon was on the podcast.
Yes.
Not knowing who I was.
No.
And then I saw your message. I looked at your profile. I was like, oh, I know who this is. And my other friend, Michelle, her name is Michelle. She does these MetaMen retreats, and you did a sound healing little journey during that session. So I was like, oh, that's super cool. And it was clear that you had no idea who I was. So it was awesome. So I am excited to have you on and just kind of talk about, I love how these conversations can just go wherever. But would love to just have you introduce like your background story. So I was looking at your website, which was, like I said, very well put together. The design was beautiful. And you did have a certain section that portrayed your story, how you got into this. So if you want to, wherever you want to
recap.
Yeah, kind of get into it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you like a point on each thing. I went to a Jewish private school when I was very young. My father was Orthodox Jew. My mother was a gypsy tarot card reader.
Whoa.
Eventually she wasn't really an official tarot card reader. She was a woman who has esoteric gifts, but didn't quite believe in herself because of the way the world was. And they had like an abusive, like many people in this world, unfortunately, and very, very, very patriarchal versus goddess kind of energy, which is like a huge piece of what I'm here, I think, to help. And the men's retreat that we met at, I remember when I was invited to do that, I was really grateful because I really love, and I spoke to that in the beginning. I spoke about like how important it is that I feel like as a woman who has really come from a core household where religion and was used to, instead of exalt the feminine, like oppress. And that happens so many places. With Iran, it was this, it's still happening in the world. But I knew at a very young age that I was supposed to heal where women like my mother, but also what has come as I've grown through my 30s now, I'll be 40 this year, where it's just also when I have male clients, they're around your age, they're like 30-year-old men who have a desire for initiation from like this goddess kind of creature that I archetypally am, in order to understand, because some men come in with codes. It's very fascinating. Some men come in, and I know this is not my story, but whatever, this is what's coming out.
Keep it going. Yeah.
Some men come in with codes intrinsic, where they really honor and revere the feminine. And other men, either from, all of my work when I do my healing work has to do with like social conditioning, trauma release, past life, karmic release, and unplugging from that. So other men come in with codes. Let's use my father for an example. Had not a good relationship with his mother and also had a sister. And so the women in his life weren't trustworthy for different reasons, and therefore has deep wounding with the feminine. And then so what does the masculine do to overcome that? And sometimes, unfortunately, they use means to assert themselves over, as opposed to understanding what equal power is. That's prevalent in our politics. That's prevalent in every facet of where we are right now as a consciousness. And I feel, just to go back to my own life and my medicine journeys and the weird initiations that we were talking about ayahuasca, and you were like, oh, I just did my first journey and it was all bliss. And I was like, oh, good for you, because mine were like that, very multidimensional, very cosmic home for me. And then, I don't know, it opened me up to also seeing not only the pitfalls in like people holding spaces like that, but also the light and shadow just in our own journeys and in our own understand, like the pain that's really at the root of the world. And so how do you have these things like suffering, right? Buddha, noble truth, karma, you know, all these terrible things, but still come back to beauty and service. And I feel like, and humility. And so in this world of like influencers and power and like top down hierarchy and look at me and I'm going to twerk my way to the top spirituality, like how do we understand a consciousness where we're woven to something that we don't quite understand, but is moving and precious. And then if we surrender to that completely, which equals ego death, which equals not maybe getting what your ego desires are, but allowing a force that is greater than yourself to move through you. And that's a lot of what I do in singing and healing. That's when I know that my transmission as a healer doesn't come from me, Michelle, doing it. It comes from what I'm surrendering to, which is infinite love and infinite everything, and letting that cosmic force move through me, even if it's going to obliterate me. And that's literally, it seems, I'm a Scorpio, so my journey is birth and death and all of those transformational energies all the time. And I don't know if that's the right path, to be honest, but it seems to be the way that my life has taken shape, and it's given me a piece of understanding prayer in a certain way, and understanding what it is to be a channeler and a healer through compassion, and an alternative to like this mainstream world. And just to recap my story, Ram Dass was one of my teachers at a very early age, and I kind of got to like hang out with him a bit. In my 20s, I got to Skype with him often, and he would giggle and laugh at me because he was like, "Do you have any other teachers?" And I was like, "Duh, you're my teacher." And he was like, he giggled then and was like, "You're doing good for being self-taught," because he was like, you know. So anyway, so it's been a journey of finding myself and my curious, weird, not fitting into mainstream culture, because I feel like I'm a really pure and sensitive little inner child who wants to love everything. And I don't understand the politics and the divisiveness and the way that people play games with each other on this plane. And I've been hurt by that probably in multiple lifetimes. And I've incarnated into seeing what that is. And so I'm like devoting my life into being the change I wish to see, for lack of using a cheesy catchphrase.
Wow, there's so much that came to my mind as you know, as you just went through all of that. I mean, there was the abusive relationships between people. That's very prevalent. There's the fact that you taught you learned directly from Ram Dass. I'm trying to think.
I mean, he wouldn't say that. I mean, I just talked to him a bunch of times and met him, and totally had a transmission in 2012 when I went to his house, and I basically just cried in front of him for like an hour.
But still, to be physically in his presence is
it was crazy.
An opportunity that I mean, he's a very well-known individual. That's really interesting. One thing that I was going to ask you about is, or maybe did this, your journey right now, did that stem from your mother? Is that what you're stating?
Yeah, both of my parents. I'm very, very close with both of my parents. I think I've done some healing. I have a sister too, and she's kind of estranged from my dad, and I am grateful because, again, I don't know what's right or wrong, but there's something that I do archetypally just in my understanding. It's like the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung, and seeing everything. If we're a soul, which is something that Ram Dass kind of taught me, and we take an incarnation, then what happens to us is archetypal, like a storybook character. And it's also something I guide my clients through. So it's like seeing everything that happens to us from the witness, as opposed to taking it personally. Now, if we can do that, so my parents acted out a drama in order to give me a certain karmic conditioning, a lesson, so that I could have certain experiences, so that I could bring healing to the world from it. So in that way, I've been able to totally absolve them from any kind of personal.
When you say karmic conditioning, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, like to be. So there are people who have
karma is from the Hindu. Is that?
Oh, I can get basic with the definition.
Yeah, explain it like I'm
sure.
5.
Okay, well, that's not my easiest thing, by the way. This is like something we were talking about me redoing my website.
Yeah.
Like that, what you just said is my karma. So, okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, so my karma in this lifetime, according to my astrology chart, it says that I have a 5-planet stellium of Sagittarius all in the 12th house, which is the last box, which means like the highest of all of its Pisces box. And Sagittarius is like the archetype of spiritual teaching or just teaching. It's in the spiritual box and it's a teacher archetype, right?
Okay.
Okay, my South node is also there, which is what you've done in the past.
South node.
Yeah. And so, and I can teach about the nodes. I can teach about all this stuff forever. Anyway, so that means that I'm not supposed to I can do what I'm doing there because it's also my rising. So I won't get into that details, but it's karmic. So there's something that needs to be let go of it in order to move into the future. Now, my North node is where you are moving into the future, which is in the opposite sign, because the way that the archetypes work is there's 2 different polarities. That I know this is not 5-year-old logic, but just go with me. And so the Sagittarius is the teacher and then Gemini is the student, right? So instead of being the teacher, I kind of need to be the student. And instead of doing it in the spiritual box, I need to do it in the Virgo box, which is every day. Just every day, explain it to me as if I was 5. Okay, so my karma, my instruction in this lifetime is to take deep esoteric knowledge and wisdom and relay it in a way that human people can understand. Now, our karmas we're more comfortable doing the things in the South node because that's what we've done for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So it's always a challenge. There's always a stretch into what the soul asks for growth. So it's uncomfortable. So maybe you've been the shy person in the background for many lives, but now your North node's in Aries, you need to assert your independence. You need to like claim your stake. That's going to be uncomfortable. So you have to move toward that direction. It's going to challenge you to leap and surrender and do those things. And that's how you grow and evolve as in your consciousness. So karma can be good or bad, but it's basically the theory that past behaviors or actions that either your soul has done or have been done to you, I find a need to be worked with in a way that is conscious so that you can mine the gold. So if I go into the pain of, I have diaspora and genocide on both sides of my lineage. So my mother's Armenian and my father has a Jewish lineage, and both of those have had some really hardcore, So I can feel what that feels like to be kicked out of places. I feel it in my cellular. It's called epigenetics. That's actually scientifically proven that ancestrally we have that.
That's
another way to say karma. I incarnated into a family where I have being an outcast on both sides. And so my karma is to go into that feeling of what it feels like to be pushed out completely of any kind of community and feel like what it feels like to be stoned or cast out as a witch, which is one of my most popular meditations, and then work with that and neutralize the hate, anger, rage, whatever that is, and see it with love, the same way I was describing with my parents. When you go into the negative feelings about that, what I have found is that you can also gain merit from past lives that you've had, or you can heal the karma of the ancestral lines. I do this with my clients constantly. It's one of my gifts. And then when you do that, the soul in this current incarnation, this is what I see shamanic healing as, is that you go almost back in time and rewire your consciousness to it. It's kind of like a multiverse thing.
Wow.
And then once you change it there, it actually lightens up. And they say that it changes back in time and forward for generations.
Oh my God.
And that's what people talk about, where they say that like I'm the person in I'm the breaker of chains in my karmic lineage, because like for me, I've had my grandmother was married to an alcoholic. And so like the women being abused and having that kind of, we're not going to do that. I can tell just by your auric fields, like it's not going to be that way. Right. And so that's us seeing that pain and being like, okay, no, I'm going to be more conscious about it. And the way that I walk in the world is not going to repeat these patterns.
Wow. Mind blown.
So that's not 5-year-old, and I'm not great at, I'm like, I was a college teacher.
I'm also not 5, but I just, that's
what mainstream, like that's what what's the 30-second clip thing,
Right.
and I'm not great. I'm really trying, and that's
No,
I
that
think
was
why I'm
fantastic.
not popular.
Well, no, I bet you're more popular
Come
than you
to my
think.
college class.
You're being humble right now. As soon as you linked in epigenetics too, that was something that
Yeah.
really clicked with me because so as I was stating to you previously, I'm still on the very beginnings of my spiritual awareness. I don't think or at least I'm more conscious about this exploration in comparison to maybe being taking certain unconscious habits, like practicing spiritual habits or actions that I didn't even realize were spiritual in a way
I can see that in you
previously.
energetically. Yeah.
Um, but now I'm just kind of opening up to this because of the profound experience that I had with ayahuasca. And I think at the age of 30, you know, I was turning 30 a month later. So around the Metamen retreat, I was turning 30.
Mm.
And the ayahuasca experience was March 7th. Some woman told us at the very end in the morning that March 7th, all the 7 planets aligned, which was very fascinating to me. And then also someone had told me, I'm not into astrology and but someone told me before I was going that when you turn 30, there's a Saturn
Yes.
revolution. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then this woman at the end said that there was this planetary alignment. And I was wondering, I was like, did this have any effect on my experience? And anyways, I'm still like exploring and I'm also very cautious. And what I loved about your website is how you portrayed how there is this kind of spiritual materialism in a way.
Yeah.
And that was very helpful. I think it kind of put me at ease a little bit because I'm starting this podcast. I'm trying to follow my intuition with having people on and being, just this balance, this dance of having people on. And you reached out but there are certain people in maybe the Austin region that have that
maybe.
kind of, definitely, they definitely do. And so I always just kind of, I'm trying to be open-minded and not judgmental. It's like a really difficult thing to do.
Amazing.
But it's fun, I guess. I mean, it's still like, it's this challenge. And so, everything that you just said moments ago just almost put me to tears because of the way that you eloquently put it into words. And now that, in America and just most of society, advanced or maybe developed societies have a more rational scientific approach. It's much heavier.
Yeah.
So when you say epigenetics, and we've that's somewhat of a new field.
Totally.
How we can see that because people used to think their fate and their destiny was once they knew there were certain genetic makeups within their ancestors, like, oh, my ancestor has this, it's in my genes, there's nothing I can do about it. But epigenetics has formed this understanding of, oh wait, your actions can make a difference. Obviously, there's certain conditions that can be passed on genetically that are difficult to maybe, change or evolve. But the fact that I forgot exactly what you said, but it's you're taking certain maybe traumas or things that happened to your ancestors. So you noted that your grandmother's husband, so your grandfather was an alcoholic, and so my grandfather, my father's side was as well. And I've exclaimed this on the podcast the past like 1 or 2 episodes, but I'm 6 months sober from alcohol. But even before that, like, it wasn't really like a strict thing on my mind. I was like, yeah, this is kind of eased in to just not wanting to drink anymore. My lifestyle is, gravitated into this, just not drinking anymore. But at the same time, there is now a commitment in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've done it for this long, I've abstained from it from this long, there is somewhat of a commitment, and it feels good. And I've expressed this with other men in my life here in Austin, and a part of me does, my soul is somewhat filled because I recognize a lot of maybe a lot of the problems or the difficulties that my family has faced is from that. And maybe that's the same with you, with like your grandfather being an alcoholic through other internal struggles that he had, then that caused other damages to.
Well, for us, it wasn't through that. I want to say two things. One, what you've done is extricate yourself. That's what consciousness is. And that's what true spirituality is like deconditioning yourself from the matrix of thought. And that has to do with Joseph Campbell's work and like the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to individuate and come into your own power, you actually have to leave behind the tribe and the consensus. And so there were a lot of people, and I feel like this will resonate with people who are listening, is like there were a lot of people who perhaps your heritage or your nationality, the drinking is a part of the culture and embedded. And if there is toxicity, so in my case, that wasn't it. It was more about not having divine masculine that was actually anchored in truth and kind of out of integrity. The drinking itself isn't really prevalent in my particular family. It was just like there was a chain of men who kind of were like wobbly, but or just a violent or different things that were out of what the divine masculine archetype actually has the ability to provide and to protect and to be resourced. But it's so important for anyone on their own journey to do what you did, which is actually to come into your heart and ask, am I doing this out of habit? Am I doing this out of condition? Does this serve my soul at this time? What is actually the right medicine for me? That takes listening and slowing down enough to actually hear the answer, then being courageous enough to separate yourself. I actually saw Tom Holland. Do you know who the Spider-Man boy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I like him. I have a crush on him even though he's like 27.
Yeah.
But I just think he's adorable. But he actually talked about that recently on Jay Shetty's podcast.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he talked about how it was the thing that freaked him out the most was not being able to go out with his friends. And so that's the trapping. The trapping is societal. And so when you were saying to me, like, I'm almost in tears listening to you. For me, it's actually been quite painful, but like I've never been able to be normal and I've never been able to fit in. And I've always been like this weird witchy medicine woman. I talked to a girlfriend. She randomly called me. I haven't talked to her in 25 years, but it was somebody I went to high school with. And she now lives in Ireland. And she was messaging me and she was like, you kind of became what I always knew you were, but I didn't know what that was. And then now you are that.
Now I see.
But I was like, what, an oracle? Like, what is the thing? But she's like, you always were this thing. And I always stuck out and I always was this. So it's not for like, I didn't do it because I'm like enlightened. I did it because I kind of had no choice. And it turns out, it turns out and that's inspiring, but it's been hard. It's not easy to not be able to be mainstream. It's a weird feeling when you you don't fit in, and then when you stand in your power, you're attacked or pushed against because of your magnitude, and because people are threatened by that. And people, that's what we were talking about with the spiritual materialist. Like, people are unfortunately not as humble and generous as I would choose if I lived on a planet full of people.
Or it's superficial. And it's just, it's not who they are.
That's another one of my teachers actually told me that, because I was like, I want to be a person who's I want to be more masterful in my field is really what, like, I want to do this and I want to look like Marianne. I want to look like this kind of a person. And one of my teachers she's deeply well known for what in that field. And she was like, some of those people are jerks, like behind the scenes. Just because they have outward success and popularity, like who they are as people are a little bit more vicious than, maybe their outward persona would suggest. And for me to really, she was just like, this is a 60-year-old woman talking to a late 30s woman. And saying, like, you think that you want those things and you think that you want that culture, but really, like, just be, and I keep getting that message over and over again, just be a good person inside of yourself and don't plug into the matrix that says if you're in this field, you have to look the certain way to be successful. Because it seems like, just like what you're reflecting to me in 5 minutes, and everybody who I really drop in with, they're like, wow, I really love the purity that is not that thing. And I'm like, yeah, well, I didn't choose this. It's kind of awkward to be that, but I'm glad that it's helping in a weird way.
Yes, it definitely has. Even just this conversation, we've been going for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's already feeling, like the flow of the conversation. It's already natural, and I can just see who you are. And when you showed up to Squatch today, you just, you seem like a very bright and nice person. And to comment on that individual in your class who was saying they wanted to have that masterfulness like that person. It's great to want to master your craft, but at the same time, if you try to compare and grow towards something like an identity, I just don't know how I feel about that. Like, I think that as I do this podcast, as I journey in Austin, as I do all these different things, I'm reaching towards things that feel right and developing and sculpting my character in the present moment. So if you're just like aiming for one thing, I understand goals are helpful. Having a vision is helpful, but I find it that, as you're in this, whatever, it doesn't have to be spirituality, but it could be other fields. I mean, you want to have somewhat of a broad vision.
Yeah.
You want to keep it kind of broad so that you're not super strict, and you are okay with imperfection. You're okay with humility. Like it's just something that I'm learning, and something that, I love doing this. This is going to be episode like 29 or 30. I'm doing it for half a year. And what's interesting is that I exclaimed I was going to do this at not the Meta Men retreat that you went to, but another one. And I was like, I'm doing it. And I finally did it, and I put it into, I put it into the world. But I don't know where it's going to go, but at the same time, it pulls on my soul strings,
That's beautiful. And you're not attached.
Yeah. I'm not super attached to the outcome. Like, I did a little bit of, in the beginning I was, right? Like I was super afraid of how am I going to be prepared enough? Am I going to say the right thing? And now it's just, I do a little bit of research, and then I just kind of I drop the book and I let the conversation take itself, take on, it's like this energy of its own. And so, I'm rambling, but,
no, I mean, I can say something nerdy about Krishna if you want, based on what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like Krishna says to Arjuna on the battlefield, and he's like, or I don't know, this is in the Bhagavad Gita. And he's like, do what you do, but deliver the fruits of your actions to me. And this has been a really hard time. You said it was a student, who was talking about masterful, but it was, it was me. I, as a Scorpio, I get fixed and glued onto, I have like this obsessive piece of my mind where I get fixed onto things. And I think mastery itself is a Scorpio kind of lesson, like coming into self-mastery or becoming a master of your craft. And I do healing work, and it's like being respected, recognition. It's kind of ego stuff, but it's totally something that's like in my sphere. And when I see people who are really, and that might be it's one of my lessons, and the universe keeps telling me to get off of it. Like, it's a dog with a bone. Like, put it down. Like, take it, like, let it go. Because and that's true. And I notice that when I do my channeling work, and when I do my weekly, I'm working on the podcast, but I do an Insight Timer Live every week, and it's called Vocal Alchemy for Chakra Clearing. That was something in the beginning I think I would plan, and now I just I'm like, hey everybody, what's up? Let's see what's gonna happen. Like, I'm gonna hit on these bowls, I'll say a prayer, and then we'll just see. And it's like, I mean, if worse comes to worse, I can have people tone up the whole chakras, but I just I'm very in surrender. And I wish that I could be that way with every aspect of my life and my mission and my purpose. But I'm not. I am still in that, like, I want to achieve this, or I want to do this. And I'm really right now, like, maybe in 6 months I won't be this way, but I feel like I'm weaving these threads right now of like unconditioning myself from any kind of like, I need to go this way direction, to like really like what is present, what's in the present moment, versus like, what am I building myself into being? That itself is that is a really hard, I think, for Americans, just especially, right? Because America is like, get it, rawr. And we're like, it's like, but Eastern is like more like moment by moment, breath by breath, that kind of thing. And it's
very difficult.
It's very, when I'm a teacher, when I'm teaching, I feel it. But when I'm in my own head, in my kitchen, I'm like, I need to do things.
I think that you're much farther along than the average American.
You're sweet. Yeah, thanks. I still know how nuts I am in my own head, though.
It's that, it's the non-normal people that I like to have on my podcast.
Yay.
So I think that you're much farther. Going back to like your friend that lives in Ireland saying like, you are who we thought you were going to be, but we couldn't put our thumb on it. That's a testament to you holding integrity to your life. Like your life is an art of who you are.
For sure.
And
that I agree.
There's a lot of people that don't do that, including myself, maybe up until the past few years.
But that's all perfect timing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and that goes back with what you were saying about your Saturn return coming. I mean, when I think I was 29 when ayahuasca came to me in 2012, and that and I was actually a month before my 30th birthday. I think if it was the right thing, because 2012, and I was born in '83.
Wow.
So it was September of 2012, and yours was the equinox of the thing. So and that right there, that piece that you can't fabricate, that the way life happens to us through synchronicities. I met a man who was like one of my best friend, teacher people. He was a festival leader at this festival I went to that same year, 3 Days of Light. I had done the ayahuasca, and a month later, because it was in the story.
Website,
And he died. He died a year. We were friends for 1 year, and then he passed away the next year. And he was like the only person who was like saw me and like really saw me, like spiritually saw me, like he saw me, like a real like I know who you are. And meanwhile, everybody was like me to me, and I was like, I want a friend. It still happens. But he was like, hello, like priestess, like it was real. Like there was respect on a multidimensional level, and he comes in and out, and I feel him sometimes. And then, he comes through birds and stuff. And those are the things that we can't fabricate. I couldn't have made things happen with my mind. And so that's really the basis of my spirituality, is the weird synchronicities that let me understand that there's, even though all this crazy stuff happens to us and we have these weird sufferings and these karmas, there's some thread, and that thread is like this golden weaving through all of the mess of our lives and all of the circumstance. And sometimes I even notice, I track this, I talk a lot about this on my Instagram, is like you're given a certain direction by your spirit team where you're like, this is totally what is gonna happen. I'm gonna go this, and then it doesn't, and then like you fall apart and you're like, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. But then something else happens that it's like, like now everything is great again. And you're like, did you guys do that did I just like follow a thing and then fall off a cliff and then you like gave me a cake? Like, was that the whole point? And like, is that how I evolve? And like, you guys, my spirit guides think this is a great idea and it's funny. Like there's some kind of, Terrence McKenna said it, where he said he took a bunch of mushrooms and like he was met with like Jewish humor. In the astral, they were like, I don't know. He was like, I don't know why, but the mushrooms have like this, who was the Marx? Somebody Marx.
Karl Marx?
I don't know. I think that was the
no, that's the communist.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Not him.
I don't think the mushrooms are communists. But Groucho, where it was like the cigar and it's like, that kind of thing. Yeah. So he said that they have a humor to it. So that is what I'm speaking about. It's like there's this weird, like if that exists and that's real and that's God, is like some weird humor that guides you through all the suffering.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, like I'm still very new to this journey, and I feel like I'm talking to a professional when it comes to the spirituality.
Technically, I am a professional.
Yes,
right? It's my job.
But so something that really clicked with me, and I bought the book. So Carl Jung.
Yeah, he's the bomb.
I actually haven't read any of his books formally. I've listened to, I think indirectly, I've listened to what he's put out into the world. And so he's known to be a psychologist and psychotherapist. And I was watching a episode with Lex Friedman and Robert Kennedy Jr., who's running for president. At the very end of the conversation, Robert was talking about his sense of spirituality to Lex. It was, honestly, I watched it 3 times. It was 15 minutes long. It was 15 minutes of like a two and a half hour episode. So I rewound it and kept watching. I was like, something really clicked with me. And so he talks about different things in his life. When his father, Bobby Kennedy, was killed, and obviously his uncle, JFK, was killed. I didn't know this, but Robert Kennedy Jr., he said he became an addict. He was a drug addict. And he struggled for a long time. What enabled him to get out of that was spirituality, was some belief in God.
That's
right?
beautiful.
It was very hard for him to get out of that. And he bought this book, and it was Synchronicity by Carl Jung. And I have it on my couch, but I haven't started reading it yet.
I should read that. Yeah.
But what made me buy the book was what Robert said. And what Robert said was that, I think this is in the book, I would assume so. The book is called Synchronicity, and Carl Jung is speaking to one of his patients in this, like, on like the 3rd floor of a building in Europe. And the patient, is mentally ill according to the times, and like, in this facility. And the patient is saying, I've had this very, very vivid dream of this particular bug, and just talking about the bug. And as this is happening, there's a tapping on the window behind him.
So great.
And so Carl Jung is just trying to ignore it and focus on the patient. It just keeps happening, and it keeps happening. So he's like, okay. So he stands up, he opens the window, and this bug, the exact bug that this patient is speaking to, which is not native to the location in Europe, flies into the building right into his hand. And he looks at the patient, and he goes, is this the type of bug that's been in your dream? And she goes, yes. And so he found these synchronicities continuously happening. And there was no explanation, scientific explanation. The laws of physics did not have any explanation for this. And ever since I've done ayahuasca, but even like moments of clarity before ayahuasca, when I was really finding a stronger sense of myself through maybe meditation and other things, like taking care of myself, synchronicities would start to happen. And there really is no explanation. And Carl Jung, I think at the end of the book, he says, like, I don't have really any evidence to explain this theory of synchronicity, but what I can show you is that it's anecdotal evidence of people that walk out of these facilities, these insane asylums, whatever you want to call them, whatever the correct term nowadays is. But he said that everybody that had some belief in God walked out much healthier and in tune with themselves versus people that did not. So that's all the evidence that he could present, from like a by the book standard. But so anyways, you were talking about synchronicities, and I think that's a part of spirituality that really is just mind blowing to me. It's like, it really is, when you understand that, you're able to kind of surrender to certain things. Because I used to be I need to control things. Like, there's a guy named Tim Ferriss. I'm not sure. He was very helpful for me to kind of get out of this when I was like 24, 25, like in a struggling moment. And a lot of the people that he interviewed were incremental to my growth. But he's very like productivity hacking, and I've strayed away from that over it's been helpful for me to get to the place that I'm at right now, right? So I'm grateful for that. But then there's a certain moment where you have to have this balance of allowing things to just
masculine and feminine. You have to. His is very linear, right? His framework of thought. It's all about time, which would be like a masculine construct. There's finiteness to it. And then there's the flow and the allowing and seeing what happens. And
yeah. So
we have to sometimes go in one direction heavy and then the other direction heavy. And then hopefully we find a balance between both. I think that's the most integrated individual, is somebody who has a balance between both sides really well. I'm still working on my masculine structure for my own self. I'm great with, I'm giving advice to other people, but for my own business, I hire people to help me strategize because I'm so, for some reason, in my feminine, in the art and creative part of my business. But I want to talk about the synchronicity piece because I actually have a theory that isn't my theory, but in the same way that my friend passed away and I experience him, that by the way, have you ever had somebody cross over and then had can them come through a medium or felt them in some way? Has that happened to you?
It's been happening more often since, so like during ayahuasca, my grandmother and great grandmother.
Woo!
Yeah.
Oh, I want to know about that. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's really beautiful.
Do you want me to
go for it?
Okay. I mean, well, it wasn't really anything that would cause me to. It's not really a large story. It just during moments of the ayahuasca journey where I was just kind of blasted off into a different dimension, closing your eyes and all these different geometric patterns, and just like there's this moment where you're like, okay, there's more to the rational world, the Western world.
Exactly.
If you go through this experience, and there were scary moments too. Like I did describe that it was beautiful, but there are just
the astral is multi-layered, just like this place.
Yeah, and I was I pondered on the cause and the effect, and because a part of me was like, well, was it the music? Because the music changed, and it was more like, I've said this on the podcast before, but it was like a combination of like guitar and maracas and singing and bongos, and then it was only bongos, and the only bongos reminded me of like Native American war chanting, and so that's where like the energy of the music
does direct that ceremony
did kind of change my internal state to more of a fearful one, and I was wondering if it was the music or if it was like my own thoughts or if it was like something energetically that I can't comprehend.
No, I mean, I've been in the ceremonies where
You're a great person I could probably ask.
Yeah. No. I remember the shaman that I worked with, he was funny. His name was Jorge. And he was like, he looked at me once and was like, you can see what I'm doing. Like, and I was like, yeah, I can. I'm learning a lot, And he was like, oh, it's very interesting. But no, I totally remember one time watching him like almost like, I don't know if he was turning into a snake or he saw that there was like this energetic snake kind of frequency in the room that was like, and then like driving it almost with the sound of like a guttural sound. And it was like almost like a tiger on the hunt kind of energy. And I watched it at a certain point where it was like 75% of the way through the ceremony. So that part of the ceremony usually happens in the very beginning where they're like looking for stuff to like expunge and people start purging and all that stuff. And then it gets really light and whatever. But I remember there was one teaching where I was observing the ceremony and it was like, almost like I heard him think there's still something in the room that needs to leave before I close this space. And so, then the rock music of the ayahuasca came back out. I hope nobody gets mad at me for saying that. And then it became like this thing where it was like, let's get primal for a moment. And I do the same stuff in my work, to be honest with you. I'm doing a ritual on like in a week where I'm going to do like a drumming and having people move. And like, that is I think that's probably been as old as time.
Yeah.
That the drums bring the earthy and bring the,
Well,
go for it.
So whenever there was those fearful moments, I would get some kind of, I don't know, it might have been a vision, but also like something within your imagination.
Really?
My great grandmother and like other people would
your allies would come.
Yeah, whenever it gets scary. So,
it's so beautiful.
Not a long story, but you were reflecting on a theory. I think
well, I mean, you kind of set me up perfectly instead of me going on about it, which has to do with the multidimensional nature of things
Mm.
and how there are realms in the Kabbalah and so many different mystic texts. They talk about these levels, and the reason I'm talking, like I don't know it by heart, but it's like the tree of life, and it's like, okay, God's like the very top, and then there's archangels, and then there's like this order kind of in the astral plane, and then there's like the demonic, like the lower energies or earthbound spirits, and like all these levels, or like our relatives and our ancestors, like they all live, our spirit guides, ascended masters, you know, the deities that when I sing mantra, like Shiva, like the Archangel Michael, these are forces that exist in this other plane of dimensional consciousness. And we can attune to those qualities, and we can attune to those forces, and we can build relationships with ascended masters, like people like have relationship with Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary, et cetera, or Jesus, right? I know that's debatable. Don't call him an ascended, he's God or something, but instead of an ascended master. But if you think about it like a quality of like, I don't know, if he was a real person and became a teacher and ascended, then, or Buddha or whatever you want to call it, it's like I can tap into that field of consciousness and ask for its blessings. And so I wouldn't believe it unless I've experienced it, but these we have guides. And I have a personal theory that we, like, okay, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I'm the person who, in my little crew of people, say I'm like connected to 12 other spirits. And I'm like, I'll do the one with the body. I'll jump into a body, and all 13 of us are going to be plugged into whatever happens to me now. But you guys are going to stay in the astral, and you'll try to help me through this incarnation. And somehow the karma that I will clear, or the things that I will achieve, is going to be for all of us, like a soul group. And so they are my guides and my guardians, and they're with me for this lifetime. But I also see it like they're merged with, in some subtle way, my walk. And so they will guide. So the synchronicity, so you mentioned the bug and the thing. For me, moths, there was a time in my 20s where like these giant moths would be on my door, right at the handle, like multiple times. And then I went to the yoga studio that I always went to, and I got there early because the place was closed, and there was a giant moth on the door. And it was just like a thing. And so like now the moths are a sign from my spirit team, because that just happened for a certain chapter. And recently I saw a post on Instagram, of all places, where they were talking about in India, they say that the moth is like the last incarnation that you have before you come and descend. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because it was always a spiritual metaphor for me. I didn't know it was a real thing. But yeah, I believe that there are these beings, and I also believe that like one of those beings is like our protector spirit and like a guardian angel. And when I've had two friends who crossed and came back through a medium, and it changes your life. And the thing that I don't understand is how come you can cross and still sound like your personality, because the medium didn't know the person. But I've had multiple mediums come through with like one person, and this person always does the same things, sounds the same way.
Wow.
And it's like, how does that happen?
So like, just to reflect on that,
Yeah.
the fact that you went to different people that have these medium channeling abilities, and they channel a friend
of mine,
of yours that passed, or
and he talks exactly the same way every time.
And each person that's channeling is
and with the same
something to
humor
that.
and the same dumb jokes, like different versions of with different people who would never know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never.
It really changes you when that happens a couple times, because there's a different thing for being like, oh, I do Ram Dass, I teach meditation, whatever. And then when somebody actually, like, you get a visceral thing, it like is like, whoa, like we really are eternal. Like we really have souls. Like what Ram Dass was teaching me is true. And then and not only that, we can help each other. We become helper spirits. We can do things. Our work doesn't end when we don't have a body. You know, I mean, like I do channel, but I'm also from New York. Like I am grounded in this reality. I have a little bit of, you wouldn't think about it because I'm a hippie, but like that was why with my own work, it took me also because of the sacredness of it, but like I never wanted to create a persona online where I was like hello, I am from Nanu like Republic, but I believe deeply that like starseed consciousness, like, I mean, it looks weird,
Well,
but I think that they did. They came and they gave the people who built the pyramids. Like, I'm like
yeah.
legit, like our consciousness comes from the stars. Those are my
Well,
people.
if you're following me now on Instagram, I release clips for every episode. That
Okay.
I release one.
So you're just gonna
episode.
have me doing the Nanu thing?
No,
I'm
no.
just kidding.
Well, if you want, I
No.
can just do that.
I'm teasing.
But so this next episode is with a friend. Her name is Leilani, and she talks about light language activation. And she seems very genuine and honest about
I do
her
it in my
experience.
healing work.
Yeah.
I
But
do.
what she does, yeah, you did. Yeah. You were doing that at the, I think
Yeah,
at the
it comes
retreat.
through me, man.
Hi, can you do that again? So was that was light language right there?
So
Or are
when
there
I
multiple different
experience it, I don't know, man. It's one of the gifts that I've always had. So I started doing energy healing in like 2010. I had a woman who I traded doing her website because I have the graphic design background, and she gave me like chakra work, and somehow she just awakened the part of me that already knew how to do all this stuff. It was like she worked on me like 3 times, and I used to do tarot readings. I started doing my work professionally in 2009. I was like 26, and I was like doing oracle cards at festivals and at parties for like rich women, and they would all like come in a line, and like I would tell them all these things that would happen. You know, I have like I'm really good at what I do. Like at that part, I own completely. But then one time I remember hearing, I think I need to put my hands onto this person's back. So I said, let me just put my hands on your back while I was giving a reading. And then I sang into her head. And it just like, I was like, ooh, you know, and then most recently on my insight timers, I'll be like channeling and I'll feel the different, it's like ayahuasca ceremony. And what I learned in the ayahuasca ceremony kind of melded all these things that I had been doing for so many years, which was like singing and ceremony and feeling the guides and perceiving multidimensional energies. But what's weird, you know, when you cry, but you're just releasing and there's not like a mental construct of why you're crying.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the light language. Like sometimes I'll be really deep in the insight timer, like I'm channeling, and I can feel myself holding space for a whole group of people. And these sounds will come out of me and they are weird. Like they're like I did clicking like in the last month where I was like almost like like you've heard like of Africa. That's what I thought about when I was doing it. And I was like, and it was amazing, but it's just different ways. Like right now when I did that to you and I locked in your field, I could like see myself like moving energy like in your solar plexus and heart, you know? And I can do that. I have that gift. I am an energy healer and I know how to, I don't do it as much with my clients unless it's really needed. Like I had a male client who was around your age, around the time that we met earlier this year. And he had a lot of, as most young men do, like guard to the heart. And so I had to actually go through and move some of the energy that was blocked. And he had his eyes closed and he was like, man, I felt like I came out and I could feel like my heart spinning. I was like, that was me. I was like doing the thing. And he was like, whoa, okay, cool. That's what, when he wrote my testimonial, he was like, man, she was doing it.
What she's doing.
Yeah, exactly. But so now I'm like learning how to teach other people how to do that. But that's something that I've always just kind of like been able to do. Like it just kind of like came, I think I've probably done it many a time, many lives, you know?
The ancestor, the many lives, that's something that I haven't delved into. But I've heard it come from, you know, I mean, it's a belief or an experience that many people have, you know, that people tend to relay. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think, or maybe not I think, but I do embody that, but I'm not sure if I've had such a strong presence of, oh, this was like something passed down from my ancestry.
It doesn't have to be for everybody. Like, I think you guys get off easy when you have normal, like the difference between like me being let's call myself a medicine woman for lack of a better phrase, like, and being that for my life, it doesn't make my life easier that I see all these things or like notice all these things. I think it's a blessing to have like not have to worry about that stuff really. And if you just live your simple day-to-day life and like that's what fulfills you, and you're like, you know, having a family or making food or working a job, as long as you're like happy, like that's, I think that's what another thing that I'm learning is like, I have these capabilities and I do deeply want to teach consciousness and talk about like I do a ceremonial leadership group like every year, and it's been amazing to mentor people. And I'm obviously a teacher, so it's a great gift. But for those who don't have that kind of a life where you're not having these super multidimensional experiences, I don't believe you have to. I think that just being an authentic, honest, good person is beautiful. So there's no stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
You rolled your eyes in relief in that.
Well, I wouldn't say that I experienced multidimensional.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that, so I also,
but you experienced the synchronicities.
Yeah. Well, so yes, I have much more lately, but what I've noticed is when I'm mentally, analytically focused and doing task-oriented things, and my mind's not, you know, your ego is kind of focused in for performing tasks. Those synchronicities don't come up as much, right? And I microdosed yesterday and today, like a very small amount. And
I should have done that today.
I should have told you. I should have said we should have just cheers or something.
That would have been fun next time.
But yeah, so like last night, I couldn't go to bed, and it was just like this flow of creativity and like just music and some like visionary things. It's not to say that I don't experience that. And then also I have gone through, you know, like certain traumatic experiences in my life where I felt for that man that you just spoke to, like guarding his heart.
Yes.
And I have trouble. Ayahuasca helped with this, and combo as well.
You're brave. You've done combo.
Yeah.
Ugh. I sung in one of those ceremonies for somebody, and I was like, I don't want to do this.
It's
ever.
just like pure misery for 15 minutes. But it was beautiful at the end. That's where the energetic. There's no conscious thought of why you start crying.
Yes.
That energy of just like
release.
Or
your soul knows, but you don't know consciously.
So that happened for me. Yeah. So anyways, I want to get more into, for selfish reasons, your ayahuasca, if you want to dive into like, cause we both did it around just before 30th birthday.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what called you to do that. And then you did exclaim that, you know, the first few were very beautiful for you, and then it kind of got insidious.
Totally.
Would you mind talking to that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm actually going to spin this story differently. It's funny. I have a podcast come out that I did recently, but I had a healing session also recently, and we talked about karma in the beginning. And I think I'd rather reframe this story in a way different than I've told it in the past. So before I've told it about like the pitfalls of people who are in power or matriarchies, or not matriarchy, but like people who are in like a maternal or a leadership role and they don't do it right. And because I did experience that with this woman who was the leader. But I think what the true reason is that was karmic for me. So karmically, I was introduced to this group of people. I felt like I know them in other lives, which is why in the beginning it was such like this joy of an experience, not only with the medicine itself, but it was like, oh, I'm home with my spiritual family. And then imagine a relationship, like everybody's been in this kind of relationship where it's like it starts really beautiful, and then all of a sudden like the karma starts to show itself, and you're like, oh, I'm playing out patterns that aren't even mine, but are based on this other person's paradigm of reality, and I can see how their stuff is coming up, and like now they're a needy child and I'm the mom, but I don't know how to do, you know what I mean? Because that's the karma that this other person has to, and you're just in the dance with them. And so whatever the karmas that the people have and need get played out. And again, it's not anybody's real fault. In fact, it's actually, in like Ram Dass talks about this, like it's actually love that makes somebody abuse you or to give you these certain lessons, because that's what your soul needs to grow. So that's kind of what happened to me with the circle. Is I was in that circle for 7 years, and I was really stepping into my voice and my leadership and my song and my when you sing in ceremony on the medicine, it really taught me what I do now in my vocal alchemy for chakra clearing when I do the sound healing, or what I did at the retreat. I understand the energetics of not only working with somebody, like I was talking about removing like energy in your solar plexus or the heart, but how to do that in a room. And I understand from witnessing and watching the way the shamanic container got created. It's also what I teach when I taught my initiate group. I taught a group called Initiate this year, and I think I'm going to keep it that same thing. But it's like that's what ayahuasca can be, like this initiation energy, and your 30s, your Saturn return is this initiation energy, and so it's a time of testing, and it's a time of calling you forward through something that could be fearful, so that you walk your path, like confronting death, confronting that fear, ego dying and dissolving. And then as you're transformed through that, and that's basically a different way of, it's a more empowering way for me to reframe that story, which was, it's the same thing I talked about with the spirit guides, where like they give you one thing and then you think you're going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then it breaks you down, and then it gives you a different one. And you're like, whoa. And that's basically what happened with me being a ceremonial leader. I thought I was asked to bring a group. I thought I was going to be like, oh, this is my time to like help facilitate it with this crew. That didn't happen. Kind of everybody turned on me last minute, broke my heart. Oh, it's been so long with all these people. Where, you know? I mean, I say where. It was like living a trauma slow motion. So that was really also cool and weird, because I was like, whoa, this is what being traumatized feels like, but I'm like conscious while it's happening.
Just keep stabbing me slowly.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So it was really interesting, because it was like, remember you were talking about like the lucid dream? It was like, oh, I'm going through this, but I'm doing it. And it was like being in a lucid dream. And I think that's also what karma can feel like, because you're like, wow, I'm learning something. It's so like a storybook is writing the circumstances of my life so much right now that it's kind of ridiculous. And like, there's a little part of me that's like a little back, but then there's also the pain that it's even happening, because because karmic cycles like that, initiations, they hit you in the core of your being. So all of your attachments, it has to be that way. So all of your attachments get dissolved. And once you walk through that, you're stripped. It's all these stories, all these mythologies, and like the underworld, like Anana goes all the way down and down and down and gets stripped and hung up. And it's like you lose all of who you thought you were. And then you're naked and you walk out back into the world. And then like the trippy part for me was like when life itself, like this random guy who was a Tibetan sound healer that I totally was like, this guy's wise and good. He was like, yeah, do you, I don't know why, I just feel, have you done ayahuasca? Do you want to sing in the ceremony that I'm like, oh my God, that's what I thought was going to happen, but then it didn't happen. And now you're asking me, it's so cool. So then it was like that. And we did like a private ceremony for this woman. And ironically, it was on the Lion's Gate, like a few years back, like probably like 5 years ago. And it was like a healing ceremony. She had metal poisoning, and we did this like private ceremony, and like my inner...
Metal poisoning?
She had like metal, like what's it called? Something metal poisoning.
Okay, gotcha.
Heavy metal poisoning.
I thought that was a part of like the
heavy
ceremony.
metal.
I thought that was a part of the ceremony.
No,
we're
like
poison
she
you
had
with
something
metal.
that we were healing her from. It was
okay.
like a private thing. And like my inner, like I channeled like that medicine for me. And God, positive and negative. It's like, there's so many things like that where it's like your genie, the genie in Aladdin is like phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. That's my relationship with ayahuasca. It's like so amazing, and then also so shadowy and dark and so confronting. And almost like I've had very deep experiences. Like, and the last ceremony I did was with 30 women in Glastonbury in 2019. And I I felt like it was like a little bomb went inside me and then like blew me up and scattered all of the pieces. And like, I had to like kind of put myself back together very slowly. And that's the last time that I've worked with her. And then I microdosed. Actually, earlier this year, they have, I was in this container. It was the first one in the US where you can microdose with the ayahuasca and build a relationship like through speaking to her. And it was actually very healing because it was very beautiful.
Microdosing.
Yeah, but it wasn't the chacruna, it was just the vine. And so it's really like working with her like a plant in a very sacred way. And that these plants have a spirit, just like everything. And that spirit can talk to you and give you wisdom. Anyway, so full circle is that, I've been initiated by that plant spirit, and I experience her like Kali. I experience her like the dark feminine and no nonsense. And they say it's different for everyone. Like you said, you had a very universal love experience and a lot. So I've had those moments of like unconditional love, but I've also had like reckoning vibrations. And like, I don't know if that's my own psychology. I don't know if that's coming from an abusive lineage. I don't know if that's my paradigm of what God is that God is a punishing God, and biblical like that. Who knows, maybe that's some of the things, but it's been good. It's been super light and it's been super dark and it's shaped me. The good part the last little bit that I'll say is that when you die and you lose any kind of who you thought you were-ness, they have this phrase, it like breaks your heart open, like when your heart gets broken, it breaks your heart open. Like I already understood that, but that experience that I had really transformed me. And so as I do get to lead in the small ways that I do in this world, whether it's one-on-one with people or in groups or in the posturing, if I go out and do events or festivals or things like that, I'm grateful for the integrity that it's given me, that I won't try to step on other people, because that's not how I believe a leader should walk. And there was a man in our community recently who had this outburst on social media and was trying to be provocative and all these things. And I was telling a good friend to tell him, because I think he would hear it more from him than from me, that if you want to be a leader, you have to serve truth through love, and you can't condemn. It's not going to get you where you're trying to go, and that is precious. And so out of all of those things, and I could say, oh, I was betrayed or blah, 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 but I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm just going to say I was initiated into understanding that in order to have power, I will never, ever try to steal anything from any other being. And I would rather let other people clamor for whatever the hell they're trying to get. And I can just try to be as peaceful as I can. And that's the best thing that I can do.
It's not easy to be a leader
in that way.
Yeah.
In that way. And I really feel like that's mature and missing. I don't know where that energy is in our world. I've been looking for it. I went from Florida, where I lived on the beach for 2 years by myself, drinking lots of ayahuasca and praying to the ocean and being like, maybe I should not live in a retirement community. Maybe I should try to serve the world. And then I went to Burning Man and I lived in my car for like 2 months and was like, universe, take me where you're supposed to take me. And I ended up in Boulder. And for better or worse, during that time, I saw like the superficiality of hippie spiritual culture. And I was thinking like, oh, it's better than Florida because there's, it's wealthier and there's like, more promise here for somebody like me, bohemian. And then the same thing in Austin, I came in and no offense, I mean, to the people who are my friends and influencers, but I haven't found a place yet of this kind of like deep integrity. And maybe those people don't live on social media. Maybe they're just out in their gardens and nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm being shown that maybe that's where my life will end up, is like that. Because I've really looked in California. I thought I would go to California, but then everybody from California moved to Austin. And like, I've really been in search of finding a spiritual family of people who really truly love me and aren't threatened by the magic that I hold, and want also to bring that magic to earth, but don't want to bring that magic to earth in a way where we're polarizing or like, it's icky. I don't know how to quite to describe it, but it feels like meh, you know, like, all right, look at me, be ancestor, you know, all of that stuff. I don't want to do that. I want people who really want to be in ceremony and prayer and really like attune with the infinite and sing and play and heal and live good lives. But maybe that's Lemurian that doesn't exist nowadays.
I feel like I see some of that in Costa Rica.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, through the very, very small bubble that I see on
That's beautiful.
online. But yeah, through the people that conducted my ceremony, it was somewhat of a family involved. And the word that the mother said was the rawness of the connections that they had. And I could feel it too. It was and that word rawness, I haven't heard that to explain the human experience in a while. When she said it, I was like, oh wow, that's a great word to explain what's happening when these ceremonies are conducted in that environment that was, you know, Costa Rica. I do see
Costa Rica's like jungle. I mean, I went only to Nosara, but it's like raw. It's like too raw for me. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know. I mean, that's the thing is if
need a Whole Foods.
Well, if you want to, you know, you said you were searching for that deep integrity, you might have to make those sacrifices a little bit potentially. Yeah. And I do agree. I think a lot of the people that hold that deep integrity probably aren't online.
Aren't mainstream.
Probably aren't on Instagram.
It's not mainstream.
Yeah.
Which is sad to me that deep integrity isn't mainstream. That's what I would wish.
I think,
especially since we're all trying to spiritual Instagram our ways to whatever.
I'm not really. Well, I mean,
that's a blessing. I won't now. After this, I won't do it.
No, but so I do think there are people making their presence known that do have that, and I guess that's from our own subjective, you know, judgment of those types of people. But yeah, I would say, yeah, maybe they express themselves through books, writing books, or other means of creating, you know. But I think Instagram and whatever, Facebook, Twitter, all that, it is a great tool to use to share these types of things, like what we're expressing.
That's true.
To help reach the people that probably need it the most.
That's a good point too. So in a way, we're on the front line.
Somewhat.
And you can, but you can look at it like that. And you can look at it like just them cutting through the noise of like, you know, model kind of culture, because that's the other that's the other aspect to it. But then that's the thing. Unplugging yourself from the game enough that you're not in competition with that, or not feeling bad that your stuff isn't going as viral as that kind of other stuff that has that more mainstream superficiality tone to it, but giving yourself enough credit and credence. So I guess I'm like talking to me right now that you're bringing.
I'm receiving it too.
Yeah, you're good. That means other people will too. But like giving yourself a lot that like whatever your art form is and whatever that prayer on your heart is that if you speak that into the world, then you're doing as much service, you know, and there are people, I mean, I've experienced this. This has been the last 5 years of my business, really. It's like 20% of the people who follow me, but some people, I'm always concerned about my language not being fifth gradey enough to resonate with others. And there's like 20%, I get messages from women who are like, oh my God, everything you say. Like it resonates with me on such a deep level.
Yeah.
And I've never heard anybody say this, and I've never seen that much honesty and and like for that to be enough, and for that to affect me personally deeply, where I'm not like, oh, it's not enough because it doesn't look like this thing. That's where my work is. I have to extricate my own self from the matrix and like I'm not out here for this. I'm actually out here for this deep thing, and that is a facet of my own diamond that I'm still like, my ego is still like whittling down And so I can actually be what I teach, which is like the vertical axis. Like the more grounded I am in the earth, the more open my heart is, the more I can like allow and receive from my own guides, the infinite, the less programmed I am by whatever is like important in this horizontal plane. And the less I'm taking all of that into me to find my worth and validation from other people's approval versus my own integrity. And that's a deep maturation for, I think, all of us.
It's a challenge for sure. Wow. Yes, I wanted to get into what I know you for.
Okay.
Which is
I'm like, yay, talk about me.
So the word or how it's described is sound baths or sound healing. I saw on your website it's vocal empowerment.
I know. Nobody likes that word. None of my business coaches. Everybody wants me to change it.
I tend to, I think when we talk about the mainstream and conditioning, there's a lot of buzzwords out there.
Sure.
I don't like buzzwords. When they're used to an extreme or just all the time to not really detail the uniqueness of what you do. So I think I promote it. I promote saying you should describe the way that how your art. Don't just slap a sound healing on there,
it's so much more than that. That's why I don't feel like it is. Go ahead, but I don't.
Well, yeah. So, and that goes with so many different industries, right? Like with Bitcoin and the 9 to 5 that I work, people literally will slap blockchain on their website and they don't even know what the technology does. They're just like, oh, blockchain technology. And it's like, you're just using a buzzword.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? They're using the buzzword so that their business gets more attention.
Sure.
Not for the right reasons.
I totally hear you.
That's why I have this kind of like aversion to buzzwords.
I totally get it.
Do you so anyways.
But it's hard when you're trying to be searchable. This is the balance.
Right. So that's why people do also.
And I'm not searchable at all because I'm like making up words about my stuff.
I mean, your presence on Instagram seems like it's pretty well known.
Oh, thanks.
And it's growing.
I'll say yes then.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could give an example of, or one maybe describe to someone that's never done this, never heard of it.
Okay.
What you are doing in the session.
Okay.
And then once you describe that, can you please provide me with maybe the most impactful testimonial or anecdotal?
Okay, I'll try to remember what that is. Let me take one step at a time. Okay, so like I said a little bit about the ceremonies is like when I am doing a sound healing, this goes into what I teach in my mentorship group. The first thing that I do is I set a container energetically and like create a safe space. And then I ground myself and then I listen and I receive like, okay, what's in the space energetically? So that in our case with the pyramid, the Samadhi pyramid has been a big Samadhi pyramid's where I had my first vision of getting the sound bowl. I was leaving a karmic relationship and my first sound bowl came to me in a vision, and it was like, break up with this guy and get a sound bowl that looks like this. I swear. And then it was like, and go follow this girl.
Those two decisions, that's funny.
It was it was like, break up with the guy.
Get the sound bowl.
Get a sound bowl and follow this girl who I was in this coaching program, and she lived in Austin and I had lived in San Antonio. This was like during the pandemic. And I was like, okay, that's interesting because this guy is really into my life in a personal way. And this girl, I can tell we're friends, but we're not really, really friends. So, okay, but interesting advice, but it was vivid. And then I, through synchronicity, found the sound bowl. And I was like, I think it's supposed to be like this. And it's made of sunstone. Sunstone, that's what I'm looking for. And I met some hippy-dippy crazy woman in Canada. And she sent me the picture. And my sunstone bowl is very tall and like little and it's also sunstone, and it's mixed with something called palladium, which comes from a meteorite that is based off of Pallas Athena. And I have a deep Athena kind of thing. So I was like, oh, okay. But it also made it like $700 more because it had the thing. So anyway, it doesn't matter. But so I paid more than I've ever paid for anything for this crystal bowl. But it like opened up like this thing that I've always wanted, which is, using my vocal empowerment in order to my song, in order to, and I've been singing mantras since like 2012, and through the ayahuasca, I have always done this. I didn't even like learn it. I just kind of found this is what I've been doing. But I I sing the mantras like Icaros. I understand invocation in a very deep and primal way. I understand when I sing to Shiva, Shiva has certain qualities, and I can allow those qualities to imbue those. They're imbued in the sound and in the mantras, the chants. It's like literally like magic words. And so like I'm drawing that down. And so the same thing will happen is that I'll hear through clairaudience, I'll hear like sing this song, or it'll be coming through me like with you guys with the Iriwere. And I was like singing it. And then all of a sudden I found it in the bowls that I have. And I was like, oh my God, if I tap these bowls and I sing it this way, it like becomes a thing. And so through that, obviously there was like, 15 men in that room in the pyramid. And like my desire was to create like a nourishing space, and kind of be like Divine Mother in that way, and like create a field where you guys could relax and open your hearts and like, feel honesty and feel safety and feel no pressure. And the other part that I was really aware of was like muting my sexual energy, because that's something that I've understood with like, especially when I'm like counselor healer role with younger men or men in general, is that if I walk into a room the same way I would walk into a party, if I was like normal Michelle, I would be like, hi, la, 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 and like wanting attention or wanting to exchange energy. And so I was like, okay, make sure that when I walk into this, like these 15 guys, right? Because it's like, man, and we're in a masculine retreat, we're doing ice baths and whatever like that I'm really like demure so that they don't feel like they get pulled or hooked into my feminine energy in any way.
Okay.
Because that would like because that's a whole thing.
Yeah. I understand that. Yep.
Yeah. And so like I'm aware, I understand Tantra in like a very deep energetic way. And so like you need to walk with these, you need to respect the energies as they come. And so you understand that you're not pulling on anyone. And so like, it was like, so I'm here of service, so neutral and like spacious and singing and healing and like using my song to weave, just like I talked about that snake when they do, and like they're looking for something. Mine is more about like coming in as Kuan Yin and like creating space and like weaving and like cascading and like opening and like creating some kind. This is like another beautiful feminine gift, right? It's like, how do I, through beauty, create an opening? How do I like weave my sound and the energetics of the room in a way that like when someone goes to a church or a cathedral, they're like in awe, right, of majesty and such. Like, how do I become that? Not me, but attuned to that. And then through the prayer and through the sound and the praise of the goddesses, the Tara mantra that was coming through me that I did on the looper station, and that's what I love. Like the feminine is majestic and magnificent and raw and powerful and primal and pure at the same time. And that's like what this holy chemistry of divine feminine, when she can be wrathful and she can be exalted and pure and sexual, but in a holy, sexual and holy. And weave all of those things together. That was the transmission that I wanted to offer, right? To 15 beautiful men who are here for their own integrity. And so how do I use my mantra and my prayer to do that? So that's a very specific example. And then a testimonial, I guess we could try. I mean, to be honest with you, the best thing that happens, there was something that somebody said. My favorite part of that particular retreat was when I opened for question and answer, and then I started giving readings to all the guys. Do you remember that moment where like people were like asking me questions, and I was like, your energy field is this, and your energy, I was like, oh, this is fun. I feel like I'm on a radio show where like everybody's asking. But my favorite thing is that when I'm going to actually be doing at Yoga Vita, I'm going to be doing one on the 18th. You should totally come. Because it's going to be the first time that I'm doing it like in a public, like a yoga studio here in Austin. I normally do them on Insight Timer and at retreats.
Yeah.
But so when people cry, like while I sing, which has happened throughout my life in different ways. I used to do acting when I was little and do theater. And in 5th grade, they had me sing a Mariah Carey song at the graduation. I sang like Hero and whatever. And like everybody was crying in the room. And like my mom was like, she didn't have a camcorder. And, you know, it's one of our stories in my family. But just the fact that I can sing and people cry, that's like the best thing that I think like that's a dharma piece for me. That I'm just like, if I sing and people cry, then that makes me happy. But I don't know. I mean, I can't think of any specific thing that somebody might have said.
I guess.
What did you? You were in it. Why don't you tell me?
Well, what I was just gonna say is, I guess, to reframe it for like the average man that might be, you know, kind of grinding and maybe not assessing what they need to bring space to, and bringing space. I feel like that's an overused kind of phrase, but like giving yourself the time and reflection to assess, you know, maybe if you're working yourself too hard or you're just, kind of like grind mode. That seems to be like the United States male, a lot of the men that were at that pyramid.
That's what they were, yeah.
Like if, you know, for anybody that was listening that was male and was like, why would I need to do this? Or how can it help me?
Oh, okay. Well,
is that a better way to
ask it? I mean, like, hold on, let me grab my words that would be beneficial for, okay, so I can speak to this specifically. One of my dear friends just started his own business in South Florida, and he was driving his nervous system completely, where he was like having anxiety and panic attacks and all these things were happening to him, and he was telling me about it. And I was like, what is the point of making more money and doing everything you're doing if your health is deteriorating while you're doing it? And I'm like the yoga teacher friend, right? And like, he's like, you know, because he's just like, I got to do this, and this is what I'm doing, and I'm building and building and building. Yeah. And they have those phases. Like, there's a book by Alison Armstrong called The Incredible Journey of Men or something, and it's talking about like the knight phase, the prince phase, and when you're in the late prince before you become a king, it's like work, and that grind. So I think I was talking about like the exaltation of the feminine presence and what the feminine presence does with men. And when I was in this retreat like a year ago in October, and this really alpha male, the guy, he was my partner the first night, totally ran away from me and then apologized later. It was so funny. But this really alpha male guy, when we were in this kind of dance, and it was like the feminine was instructed to give the masculine what they needed, just like read their energy and then like become, right? That's what goddess can like shapeshift, become what the man needs. And that man needed like to relax, to open, and to play. And so like I like moved my energy in this way to like, I kind of like tickled his auric field and like his like this area right here. And he was like it affected him so much that he like avoided me for the next thing. And then it came back at dinner and apologized like the last night and was like, that was me, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I noticed. But but it's uncomfortable and vulnerable, right? Yeah. For a man who is, I had a friend who was dying of cancer a year ago. And I came over and I was like, hi, play with me, I love you. This is a soul friend of mine. And he was like, roar, 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 roar. And then he looked at me and we were like taking a walk and he goes, I'm sorry, it's just, it takes me a lot to get out of my mode. And so all of these examples I've said, right? 3 different men in my life, 3 different encounters. The masculine is in the head and aligned to the doing. And the heart gets put aside. And I feel that the beauty that I do either with my male clients where I work one-on-one, or if I did a sound healing retreat, it's a pause from the drive and the pressure of having to produce, and inviting for that intuitive space within them, whether in their own masculine or their inner feminine, who knows, but to listen, to relax their shoulders, to not feel like they're burdened by the constraints of time and their own energy. Because I know that's a huge thing for men too, is like, there's never enough time for me to do. That's like a story with the men. And it's a completely disempowering story. And that my friend who was running the business, I was like, pardon me, but we were very close. So I was like, you're a little bitch. Like you're making time, this giant thing.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, meanwhile, like you're this super macho, powerful man. You have all these people answering to you in your life. And you're playing very small in your relationship with time. And I want you to take your power back from time. Time, it does not rule you. You have enough time to do what you do. Like if you can do every other thing that you're doing, feel empowered around your ability to create space for yourself and your ability to actually like, see how I get like, this is like my shamanic warrior. This is my inner masculine right now. I'm just like, this is the truth. You need to do this. And like, that is the case. And don't put the priorities of the world over your inner health. Because what is the point? And what the world, if you're a man and you have a wife or children, what they want for you, from you, is for you to be happy and healthy and spacious and full. If you are depleting yourself, you cannot give your whole heart to the people who are wanting your whole presence. So there has to be like a give. That's why the integrated masculine feminine, if the masculine is just over bypassing his heart and just driving and producing and making a bunch of money, it's like there's no soul there. You have to, that's what Tantra really is, in my humble opinion. It's like the ability to be both and to do both and to oscillate and to choose. Like just now, Shamanic Warrior Michelle came out. I'm giving advice. This is how it is, right? That's my masculine. And then like, exaltation of the goddess. Oh, so.
That was very well articulated.
Thanks.
That was very well articulated. And Tantra continues to come up in my life.
Good.
I haven't been practicing it. I don't really know. I haven't taken the time, speaking of time, taken the time to understand what it is.
You'll have a lot of different versions depending on who you speak with.
I felt that the general sense of what I was hearing, it has something to do with romantic love, or is it just your overall way of?
I've never been in, so my understanding of Tantra comes from my own inner soul, not from anything I've read so other people are going to probably disagree with me. Okay. But what I believe Tantra to be is what I've always known in my nervous system to be true, and what when I meet like a really good man or a heart-centered guy, it seems that they understand it too. And it's that the divine masculine serves the feminine, and the feminine flowers open and somehow provides everything. Just in that same way I described my work and the healing, with it's like this openness, and you can be anything as the feminine. You could be sexual and wrathful and dark and pure, all in one gift. But in order to do that, we need a level of safety and protection and presence. And if your consciousness and your presence like penetrates my soul and my being, and I open to you and flowering and just my energy and my auric field and all of that, like I sparkle light and love completely in your direction, that gives you purpose and drive to do more and be more. But that's the exchange. And there's a cutting offness for some reason in masculine and feminine, where we don't trust each other anymore. We don't trust, the women don't trust the men to be that warrior. The men don't even feel comfortable fully being the warrior, because the feminism movement in retaliation for being, the atrocities are endless, so I won't even get into them. We're like, well, we're gonna wear shoulder pads and take our power back and become more masculine and then oppress you, which is, whose idea was that? That was a bad idea. So let's not do that, because we don't win anything that way. Again, it all comes back to power and shared power versus trying to get one over on someone. And so it's like this core truth really, to me, understand. So the more that I serve and give you, the more that you serve and give me, then we are both the wholest forms of each other that we can be. And then that is like, you're divine masculine, I'm divine feminine. Maybe sometimes we switch. Maybe you need me to like drive so you can take a break. Maybe I need just like silence, and maybe we meditate together. Maybe we have the agility to be all of the things, and there's no confinement and rules. But like the truth is that we understand that we need each other, and it's so precious, and it's so humbling. And for me, what I wouldn't say I'm waiting for, but what I'm knowing that I need at this point in my life is like a warrior that I get to surrender to, that has more consciousness equal or more than mine, that I can understand, that I get to like let go of my guard and let go of all the things that have made me really, really strong and teacher and a warrioress in my own life. Or, you know, I can just say warrior, like, but that I get to put that down because I trust him to lead, and I trust him, and I trust his integrity. And I can't get to that level of my own feminine surrender without a partner who has that level of integrity. And I am completely yes to that. That took a long time. I would say it took all my 30s and a couple karmic relationships of understanding like what it is not. But as soon as nowadays, if a guy plays a scotch of a game with me, that ain't it. And that's a lot in our culture, especially like the new age hippie, the way that people are with each other. They're not honest. They're not in it, at least with me in my experience, as like, it's rare that I meet a brave soul who is like, hello, how are you? I will step into you. It's a lot of like, up here energy. And like, that's not, that means you can't take me anywhere.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Tantra.
But it'll call you more to who you truly are, and a soul in your divine masculine integrity. It'll call you forward to that. Now there's very, very, very different versions. I mean, there are very popular people on Instagram who are really just like, who are talking about things that I will get a lot of shade if I go into, but it's like people, like when they're like, sex magic is manifestation while you're like using your crystal wand and all that stuff. And like, that's not my scene. Everything I just spoke about, and like merging souls with someone who has the same level of capacity that you do, that's for me Tantra. It's not manifesting my way through masturbation to whatever. And like, I not that I knock in masturbation, believe me, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's there's different levels, and like a lot of people talk about it on more the superficial levels, but I believe that it really has to do with the attunement of the inner masculine and feminine marriage inside ourselves, the hieroskamos. And then like when I'm in front of another being, even say you were my client or anyone, is like, how do I show up at complete in integrity and exalt the part of you that I see as like the divine masculine in you, whether we're in union or not, but that's who I speak to. And that's who I call you forward to be. Like, that's living a tantric life for me personally.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And it was very helpful for me because this is a part of my personal life that I'm aiming to grow towards, or just, becoming more, I wouldn't say experienced or knowledgeable, but diving into Tantra. And
I think it's valuable. I think you should.
Yeah, because sensuality and the romantic relationship it's probably one of my most challenging moments.
Cool.
And that's something that ayahuasca somewhat showed me and helped me with. And that's due to, my mother passing when I was really young, and then a really abusive relationship by another female, so ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
Like directly after.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, I was 3 when she died, and then there was an abusive relationship when I was 4, mentally, physically.
Okay.
So trying to, one, just let go of those, or at least honoring those defense mechanisms that are within me still to this day, understanding where they come from, right? But then taking the courage to understand, how do you navigate this relationship, romantic relationship, this soulful relationship with another woman, with just trying to, yeah, just trying to.
It's healing your relationship with the feminine itself, because this is what I'm talking. It's a different version of my own story where the trust was broken, right, between the masculine and feminine. Like, I saw the way my father used religion in a patriarchal way to try to oppress the gypsy woman that my mother, in all of her freedom, that my mother was. And so it's like, so a lot of my, I guess the last 20 years, let's say, has been around healing my own relationship to the masculine and growing in a way that I could be in the presence of a man who was in his masculine more than me. And you can see it in some of my partners where they were very poetic and cerebral and soft, but not a man who could like take me, right? Where there was a little bit of a threat of danger. And now I'm very attracted to that. And I pray that the person who comes to me has that would used to trigger me or bring me to my edge. And my younger sister, who's about 11 years younger than I am, she was talking about how she's not quite there yet, where she can't metabolize that energy. And I was like, I'm going to be 40 and I finally can. So it's a journey when we get that broken, that connection broken, and in different ways we have to repair it. And so your journey of your own relationship to not only the feminine outside of you, the feminine within you, your own compassion, your own way of coming into pause, to not being driven by the mind, feeling the feelings in your heart. How much do you trust that? That was one of my clients who I had earlier this year. I was talking to, we did a lot of work around Tantra. I actually saw him in a past life as a Shiva initiate in like a temple. It was so interesting. And then some of his work had to do with that, with his own sexuality. And I was like, well, this makes completely sense with that lifetime that I saw and the way you are with your partner. But it's, to come back to your own journey, is that would be karmically what you were given. That's a very deep call. And was the grandmother who came in a vision on your mother's side or your father's?
On my father's.
Okay. Because it'd be interesting to see, like, what is your relationship to that whole lineage, that comes through your mother, and what does that mean to you? And like, are you able to connect with that?
Yeah. I mean, that could be a whole another conversation.
Not that I want to coach you right now in the thing,
I would enjoy it, but we're actually running low on time.
Okay.
So I wanted to just provide you the opportunity to shout out where people can find you. And
so I guess we can close that up by saying, like, so that's like a thread. That would actually be, that's a thread of my work, like you just spoke something about your own personal journey, right? And then I'm like, well, how do we weave that and trace that back? Because as we go through that energetic patterning, and then we kind of crystallize whatever that memory or imprint is from the past, and you understand it, that's when you reclaim it and integrate it. And then instead of being oppressed by the journey of whatever happened, we can actually be like, this happened so I would learn these things. And now that I know these things, I'm going forward in my own life with like more of a width or a wingspan around this relationship to the feminine. So you can take the things that are painful and you can mine them for gold and spin them so they actually empower you and empower your spiritual practice. In fact, you'll have medicine. Like, you may be a more devoted husband to, if that's what you're wanting to do, because of that, rather than less than, because you have more presence. It's more personal to you. Does that make sense? So it's like you're weaving it into your soul's journey, and we're given these things as like a form of destiny, because that's the calling for us to move forward. So, okay. So
thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I have a website with my name. It's Michelle Coutinho, MichelleCoutinho. And I have a button on the top of the website that says apply to work with me one-on-one. And you fill out a form, and it gives me like an energetic hit, basically, of what you may be working with. I like to work with people in 3-month containers and do deep dive coaching, because when I learned about it, it was just like, okay, this is what coaching looks like. But it's so amazing to watch what happens when you create a container like that, and you we were talking about multidimensional and synchronicity and stuff. Like that is like, there's part of me giving advice and talking the way that I am. And then there's this other whole realm that happens with people when we step into that, they make the commitment to step into the work. And then it's like, I get to watch things that I'm not even doing that happen to the person. Cause it's really just their heart and soul saying, yes, I want to change. And I want this. It like gives spirit this yes to work to evolve somebody's vibration, their consciousness. And then we work with like deconditioning maybe things in past lives or other ways in order to bring them into a different vibrational reality. And I get to teach things because obviously I'm a plethora of knowledge of like spiritual stuff. I've been doing this forever. And then I'm also an insight timer, and I do weekly lives, the vocal alchemy for chakra clearing transmissions. I don't know when this is going to come out, but I'll be doing something at the Within Center every Monday, first Monday of every month. This one, I'm going to do a shamanic soul song activation with live tablas. So I have a friend who's going to play. Yeah, you can come to that too. And it's going to be like people like, I'm going to be like giving a shamanic journey where it's like this embodiment rich practice, and you imagine yourself going into the ground, and then you start toning, and then you just like gets primal and cry, and like all these things happen. And then I'll be doing at Yoga Vita, I'll be doing on the 18th a beautiful sound healing ceremony. That's going to be really, really cosmic and delicious. But yeah, basically the one-on-ones, and then there'll be different group programs at different times. And the last thing I'll say is on Insight Timer, I'm going to do a mantra course. And that's going to be really cool. It's going to be this course that I did live a couple of times, but I'm converting it into an audio that people can just listen to and kind of absorb the mantras and the Shakti and the energy that goes into really imbuing those frequencies into your heart, into your soul, and then using your voice for singing, which is pretty much like the tool that I use for meditation. You know, but I do it through singing mantra, chanting, voice, prayer, energy healing. So that's why I call my work vocal empowerment. It's like this umbrella term for like putting all of that into one container. And I haven't really figured out a better word for it, but if you have one, I'm open. And so that's basically it, my one-on-one and my website, and Instagram is at Michelle Infinity.
Cool. And I'll put that all in the show notes, but I think that's a good start, the vocal empowerment. And then I think it's spiritual mentorship as well.
It's spiritual mentorship. I mean, that would be like the bones of what I do, you know, I think. Yeah. And then I have my initiate group. I'm doing that. I did that with 5 women this year. Last year I did 8 women. I called it Surrender. But me doing a group every year, I tried to get men this past year. I was like, I want men. And then I had 2. And then they left at right before it started. I was like, oh, I wanted to, because I do the work with, I love working with men, but it's my whole vibe, the priestess vibe is more, you know, focused on the women. But man, I mean, I've always had a gift for that. And, but yeah, having like a temple for 6 months, it's 6 months biweekly calls. And then I meet one-on-one with each person. The people scared of all kinds of things in the beginning, not anymore. They're like, one of the girls is actually on Insight Timer doing lives now because she was like terrified of doing it.
Oh, wow.
All this ancestral stuff with her parents. And now she's like, just, it's amazing to watch.
Beautiful. Well, this conversation was amazing. And I appreciate you once again reaching out to come on.
This was so fun. Thank you.
It was very fun. But I'll link all that in the show notes. And I think that's a good way to conclude.
Peace out.